We visited a few weeks back with John Garcia from Sports Illustrated. He covers college football recruiting, and he was so good we wanted to have him back. And, John, if you're good again today, you're going to get tired of us calling because we sure do enjoy the conversations. And, man, things are about to heat up. We were kind of having our production call this morning and just were kicking around. What are things going to look like on June 1st? When the floodgates open and the dead period finally comes to an end? Is it going to be like this immediate rush, or is it going to start out as kind of a trickle and then get back to full speed?
Yeah, there's no trickle, and I appreciate the kind words, by the way. There's going to be no trickle. It is right out of the gate, full speed, 100 miles an hour for pretty much everyone. And I think that's the biggest difference with everybody waiting for June. I think in a normal year with spring official visits and summer camps, you think of the schools that aren't the blue bloods, that aren't the, Alabama, Ohio State, Clemson group that has to take advantage of, one, the weather, right? Especially when you're looking at up north schools, et cetera. But then also, the evaluation to get in early with a prospect and make a call before those blue bloods eventually come in later if they so choose. The difference with this year and June 1st is that everybody is on that same playing field, including all the blue bloods, all of the SEC, all of the big boys, if you will, all at the same time, because everyone's taking, relative to most years, a conservative approach with recruiting and verbal commits to date. No program has more than 13 verbal commitments, and it's May 20th. In a lot of years, a dozen programs are already nudging on 20, starting to think about the end of their recruiting class, when in this case, most are in the middle of the road or oftentimes, like Ole Miss, at the very beginning of constructing this class of 2022. So every single program is prioritizing visits, camps, and really the entire in-person recruiting experience that nobody has been able to deal with in the last 15 months. So it should be pretty wild.
John, so as you've talked with coaches and evaluated what the camp circuit is going to look like, I'm kind of curious how teams are prioritizing things, given what you just said. So the December 21 signing day, that's what we're talking about. But summer is usually a time where a lot of programs are looking at juniors, right, as opposed to seniors. But you've got rising seniors that are going to be part of this December signing class who are going to be on campuses all across the country for the very first time in a lot of cases, right?
Yeah, I would say most prospects who are going to be, taking in a visit or a camp or both have never been to more than a school or two. And usually that school or two is just the local school, right? Yeah. So, if you're one of the best in Mississippi, you've probably been to Starkville and Oxford, but you hadn't been anywhere else. And this is going to be your first opportunity to do so. And that's why I think this has to be really crazy because, like you said, not only are schools slower and looking at the seniors first instead of the juniors first, but these kids that are currently committed, even though it's a smaller number than we're used to, they're also going to take trips and see other schools for the first time, and in some cases, see the schools that they've already committed to for the first time. And when you're dealing with teenagers and priorities and red carpet treatments, that means there's going to be a lot of fluidity with commits, decommits, all of the fun stuff. That really feels more like a December than a June leading up towards, like you said, that December National Signing Day. You throw in more camps and all the visits all together, and I just think it has the makings of sort of a, keep your head on a swivel type of month as everybody hits the road.
Visiting with John Garcia from Sports Illustrated. He covers college football recruiting. The dead period finally comes to an end. This was a 15-month dead period, is that right? Almost 15 months?
March of 2020, yep.
It's remarkable. And it's like somehow we kept going, right? I mean, we had a college football season, and some kids have gotten offers, and they put together classes a year ago. I guess we just figure out a way to adapt. What is it harder right now? And I'm not talking for 5-star, 4-star, but I'm talking about for the kid that's rated as a 3-star player. Is it harder than it has ever been for a 3-star kid to receive a scholarship offer because of what we've been talking about, but also because of the transfer portal?
And that's the X factor. So not only is everyone waiting to actually make visits, but these college coaches are more, I think paranoid is probably the right word, about their roster attrition and really just roster management in general than they've ever been, because not only do you have the portal, but the one-time transfer rule has now been granted. So, I mean, we're seeing it just in the last few days. We're seeing, SEC school to SEC school transfers like never before. So, every coach is worried about that. And on top of all that, everybody who stayed from 2020 has an extra year of eligibility. So really, roster management, this has exceeded the NFL. This is its own ball game now for these college coaches, because the scholarship numbers haven't changed while everything else has changed. So it makes it that much harder for that lower level or emerging recruit even to get on radar, because there are simply fewer spots. A lot of programs are going to take in that 15 to 20 range of prospects when you and I both know it's usually 25. So 5 less spots per school. Obviously, you do some math here. That's a lot of spots that aren't available any longer, even if you do go have that banner camp performance. So I think it's harder for the coaches to evaluate and make those decisions, and it is certainly tangibly harder for that prospect who is looking to get established to make that splash this summer. But they're sure going to try, and you can't blame them.
I mean, just quick math, and I'm not a big math guy. I mean, you're talking about 500 to 1,000 fewer spots across the Division I college football landscape, if that turns out to be the case. I mean, if that everybody holds in the neighborhood of 5 spots, that's crazy.
Exactly, and that's what these kids are up against, and again, these coaches are up against as well. And I think that's where you start to look at, okay, well, if all things are even, what are coaches going to lean on? They're going to lean on the tangible, right? The measurables, the potential. So if you're that undersized kid and you're yet to emerge, it's really an uphill battle for you, because all things even, they're going to go with the guy who is maybe a little bit longer, a little bit faster, even though he might not be as good at his particular position than the undersized prospect. So it really has a true snowball trickle-down effect that we're going to see. Despite all of the craziness that goes on in June, I think there's still going to be a lot of really, really good football players available when we do get to and through December.
John, one thing that I'm really curious about, and I think this is one of the big stories that we've got to watch, and you feel free to disagree with me if you think, in the SEC, so we got the passage of the one-time transfer without penalty all across college football, and yet in the SEC, you've still got to sit a year with regard to transferring within the conference. We talked with John Cohen from Mississippi State, asked him about this a couple of weeks ago, and he was very non-committal, said, there's a lot, you got to look at unintended consequences, and you got to figure out a way to avoid tampering, and again, non-committal about what ultimately was going to happen. Have you talked to anybody, whether it's coaches or league officials, that give you a feeling as to which way this goes in the SEC?
Oftentimes, it really leans towards public opinion, I think, in this day and age more than not. And I think that's obviously a slippery slope. But like you said, unintended consequences include tampering, that you throw in the pandemic and waivers and all the behind-the-scenes stuff that has previously granted, whether it's an interconference transfer or an immediate eligibility transfer at other positions in other conferences. Those things are always seemingly at play. And this was pre-COVID-19. So now you have that as another layer and a potential waiver buffer for these prospects looking to, for a change of scenery. You throw in coaching changes and all of those things. And I do think that, more times than not, they're going to say yes. We just haven't seen a lot of hard nose from even at the top, at the NCAA level. So the SEC is always the contention point, maybe the boiling point for these discussions. And I think that's why you don't get concrete answers one way or the other, because it is case by case, but a lot of those cases seem to lean towards yes, barring something that is really, singular and isolated, because there's so many different, not excuses, but reasons for a prospect to make a move, that he feels are justified. And if it can be, verbalized and sold, it oftentimes is bought, just because people don't want to deal with the other side of it. and the court of public opinion getting involved, which we know is very important in college athletics.
Yeah, it's a real thing. It's so very rare that we see the SEC kind of across the board make a decision in which they handcuff themselves. Whether or not they do that in this is, I think, just remains to be seen. Well, John, we're going to be calling again. We appreciate the insight. I know things are about to get really busy. I hope we can talk again soon.
Sounds good to me. I appreciate you having me on.